The plate shattered against the marble floor of the Ashford Grand Hotel, and every head in the restaurant turned. Marcus Bell stood frozen, a tray still balanced on one hand, watching his manager point a shaking finger at an old man sitting alone in the corner booth. The old man wore a coat with a torn sleeve. His shoes were scuffed. His hands trembled slightly as he held a menu he clearly could not afford. "Get him out," the manager hissed. "Now." Marcus looked at the old man's face. Tired eyes. Kind eyes. The kind of eyes that had seen too many doors closed on them. In 15 seconds, Marcus would make a choice that would cost him his job. In 3 months, that same choice would give him back everything he thought he had lost. But right now, all he knew was that an old man was hungry, and nobody in this glittering hotel seemed to care. If you enjoy powerful stories about kindness, justice, and second chances, subscribe now, because every story on this channel reminds us that one act of kindness can change a life forever. Now let's go back to the beginning, to understand how Marcus Bell ended up in that moment, and why it mattered more than anyone in that restaurant could have guessed. Marcus Bell was 27 years old, and he carried his father's dream on his shoulders like a coat that no longer fit right, but one he refused to take off. His father, Samuel Bell, had run a small diner on the south side of Chicago for 18 years. It was called Bell's Kitchen. It was not fancy. The booths were cracked vinyl, the coffee was strong, and the pancakes were famous in a 3-block radius. Samuel Bell used to say that a kitchen wasn't about the food. It was about who you let sit down at your table. Marcus grew up in that diner. He did his homework in the back booth. He learned to crack eggs one-handed by the time he was 9. He watched his father give free meals to men who had just lost their jobs, to single mothers counting coins, and looking like the world had been unkind to them that day. "Everybody eats here," Samuel used to say. "Doesn't matter what's in your pocket. Matters what's in your heart." Samuel Bell died of a heart attack when Marcus was 23. The diner, already stretched thin by years of quiet generosity, could not survive the medical bills and the debt that followed. Marcus fought for 2 years to keep it open. He worked double shifts. He sold his father's old truck. He sold his own car. In the end, the bank took the building anyway, and Bell's Kitchen became a nail salon. Marcus never forgave himself for that. Not really. Now he worked as a waiter at the Ashford Grand Hotel, one of the most expensive hotels in downtown Chicago, saving every dollar he could toward a single goal: reopening Bell's Kitchen. He had a folder on his phone with a drawing of the sign, the exact same red and gold letters his father used to have painted above the door. He was $11,000 into a $22,000 goal. He lived with his younger sister, Ivy, who was 22 and in her second year of nursing school. Ivy was sharp and stubborn and worked nights at a pharmacy to help cover her own tuition. The two of them shared a 2-bedroom apartment above a laundromat, and most nights they ate cereal for dinner because neither of them wanted to spend money on real food when they were both saving for something bigger. "You work in a 5-star restaurant," Ivy liked to tease him, "and you eat Cheerios. Best seat in the house," Marcus would say, "is still my own kitchen table." Marcus was good at his job. He remembered regulars' orders. He noticed when a guest's hands shook too much to cut their steak, and he'd quietly offer to have the kitchen slice it smaller. He noticed the tired flight attendants who came in alone and always gave them a booth by the window instead of a table in the middle of the room. His manager, a sharp-suited man named Preston Vance, called this unnecessary personal attention. Marcus called it decency. The two of them did not see eye to eye, but Marcus needed the paycheck too badly to push back. He was 3 months from his goal, 3 months from hanging a sign with his father's name on it. He had no idea that everything was about to fall apart, and no idea that the person who would put it back together was about to walk through the hotel's front doors wearing a torn coat and scuffed shoes. It was a Tuesday evening in late October when the old man walked into the Ashford Grand's restaurant, the Windsor Room, and sat down in the corner booth without anyone seating him. He was maybe 70, 75, tall once, now a little stooped. White hair combed, but thin. His coat had a small tear at the shoulder, mended with uneven stitches, like someone who had done it themselves and didn't much care how it looked. He carried no bag, no phone, nothing but a folded newspaper tucked under one arm. Marcus was the first to reach him. "Evening, sir. Can I start you with something to drink?" The old man looked up, and for a moment something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe, that someone had spoken to him gently. "Coffee, if that's all right," he said. And whatever's the cheapest thing on the menu that'll actually fill a man up. Marcus smiled. I've got just the thing. Give me a minute. He hadn't made it 3 steps before Preston Vance intercepted him near the host's stand, gripping his elbow. Who let that man in? Preston said, voice low but sharp. He walked in and sat down. Mr. Vance. He's a customer. Look at him, Marcus. Look at the state of him. Our guests pay $400 a night to stay in this hotel. They don't want to sit across the room from a man who looks like he slept in a shelter. Marcus felt heat rise in his chest. He hasn't done anything wrong. He wants coffee and dinner. That's what we sell. I want him gone. Comp him a coffee to go if you must, but I want him out of my dining room in the next 10 minutes. Marcus looked over his shoulder. The old man was sitting quietly, hands folded on the table, watching the rain begin to streak the window beside him. He looked like a man who had nowhere else particular to be, and no one particular waiting for him. Something in Marcus's chest tightened. He thought of his father, standing behind the counter of Bell's kitchen, sliding a plate in front of a stranger and saying, everybody eats here. I'll handle it, Marcus said, and walked away before Preston could say more. He did not walk toward the old man to ask him to leave. He walked toward the kitchen. Marcus brought the old man a full dinner. Not the cheapest item on the menu, the roasted chicken with vegetables, a warm roll, and a cup of coffee refilled twice. He didn't charge for any of it. He paid for it himself, quietly, out of his own tips, and told the kitchen staff to mark it as a manager's comp, hoping no one would check too closely. The old man ate slowly, like a man savoring something he hadn't tasted in a while. Between bites, he asked Marcus questions, where he was from, how long he'd worked at the hotel, whether he liked it. Marcus answered honestly, surprising himself with how easy it was to talk to this stranger. He even mentioned, briefly, his father's diner, though he didn't know why. Something about the old man's face made him feel like he was talking to someone who understood. Your father sounds like he ran a good kitchen, the old man said quietly. The kind where everybody eats. Not enough of those left. Marcus felt a strange chill at those words, the same phrase his father used to say, but he brushed it off as coincidence. Preston Vance was watching from across the room, arms crossed, jaw tight. When the old man finished his meal, he thanked Marcus, folded his napkin neatly, and reached into his coat pocket. He pulled out a small, worn card, no name printed on it, just a phone number written in pen, and slid it across the table. If you ever need someone to remember you did the right thing, the old man said, call that number. Marcus assumed it was nothing. A lonely old man's kindness, nothing more. He tucked the card in his apron pocket without much thought and helped the man to the door, holding an umbrella over him until he disappeared into the rain-soaked street. When Marcus turned back inside, Preston was waiting. You disobeyed a direct order, Preston said. You fed a vagrant on the hotel's dime, and you humiliated me in front of my staff. He was a paying guest who ordered food. I didn't humiliate anybody. You're done, Marcus. Turn in your apron. I'll have HR process your final check by Friday. The words landed like a physical blow. Marcus stood there for a long moment, apron still tied around his waist, feeling the floor tilt slightly under him. 3 years, Marcus said quietly. 3 years I've worked here without a single complaint from a guest. And now you're fired for insubordination. Clean out your locker. Marcus walked home that night in the rain without an umbrella, letting it soak through his jacket, because somehow the cold felt easier to deal with than the thought of walking into his apartment and telling Ivy what had happened. When he did tell her, she didn't yell. She just sat down slowly at their small kitchen table and put her head in her hands. Marcus, the diner fund. Rent is due in 9 days. I know. My tuition payment is due in 3 weeks. I know, Ivy. You gave away food to a man who wasn't even our problem, and now we don't have money for rent. Marcus didn't have an answer for that. He only knew that when he closed his eyes, he still saw his father's face, and he still believed, somewhere underneath the fear, that he had done the right thing. The next 9 days were the hardest Marcus had faced since his father died. He applied to 11 other restaurants and got no callbacks. Preston, he later learned, had told at least 2 hiring managers that Marcus was difficult and insubordinate. His diner savings dropped to cover half of October's rent. He sold his father's old wristwatch, the one thing of Samuel Bell's he had never planned to part with, just to keep the lights on. He found the old man's card in his coat pocket one cold morning, crumpled and nearly forgotten. He almost threw it away. Instead, for reasons he couldn't quite explain, he put it in his wallet and kept it there. 2 weeks after he was fired, Marcus received a call from a number he didn't recognize. A woman's voice, crisp and professional, asked if he was Marcus Bell, formerly of the Ashford Grand Hotel. "I am," Marcus said cautiously. "Who's calling?" "My name is Renee Okafor. I'm calling on behalf of Mr. Walter Ashford. He would like to meet with you at your earliest convenience. Tomorrow, if possible, at 10 o'clock, at the Ashford Grand." Marcus almost laughed. Ashford, as in the hotel's name. "Mr. Ashford founded the Ashford Grand 40 years ago," Renee said. "He sold his controlling stake 8 years ago to a management company, but as of 3 weeks ago, he has reacquired majority ownership. He is currently reviewing every aspect of hotel operations personally. He specifically asked for you." Marcus's stomach dropped. "I was fired from that hotel 2 weeks ago." "I'm aware," Renee said. 10 o'clock. Please come." That night, Marcus barely slept. He kept turning the old man's face over in his mind. The torn coat, the trembling hands, the worn card with a phone number and no name. It couldn't be. And yet some part of him already suspected the truth before he walked back through those glass doors the next morning. He arrived at the Ashford Grand at 9:50, wearing his best shirt, the same suit he'd worn to his father's funeral. Renee Okafor met him in the lobby and led him not to Preston Vance's office, but to a private suite on the top floor, one Marcus had never even known exist. The old man was sitting by the window, no longer in a torn coat, but in a plain gray sweater, still simple, still unassuming. He rose when Marcus entered. "Marcus," he said, "sit down. I owe you an explanation." Marcus sat, heart pounding. "My name is Walter Ashford. I built this hotel from nothing, back when I was 26 years old and had exactly $400 to my name. Before that, I was a dishwasher in a diner much like the one your father ran. A man there fed me for free more nights than I can count when I couldn't afford a meal. He never asked for anything back. He used to say the same thing you told me your father said. Everybody eats here. I never forgot him. I built this entire company trying to be the kind of person he was." Marcus sat frozen, absorbing every word. 8 years ago, I stepped back from daily operations and sold controlling interest to a management company to focus on other ventures. Recently, reports reached me that this hotel, my hotel, had name in the online reviews, 19 written thank you notes from guests specifically naming you. And I looked into your father's diner. Marcus's chest tightened at the mention. "Bell's Kitchen," Walter said. "I had someone pull the old records. 18 years of a small business that fed this neighborhood, that gave away more free meals than most restaurants 10 times its size ever did in charity. I know what it cost your family when it closed. I know what it's cost you since." Marcus's eyes stung. "I've been saving to reopen it. I was $11,000 in. It's not much, but it was something." Walter Ashford nodded slowly. "It's more than something. It's everything. And I'd like to help you finish it, not with a check, Marcus. With something that lasts." Walter explained his offer plainly, the way a man explains something he has already decided and simply wants the other person to understand. The Ashford Grand had an unused ground floor space, once a small cafe that had closed years earlier due to poor management, sitting empty at the corner of the building, with its own street entrance separate from the main hotel. Walter proposed that Marcus reopen Bell's Kitchen there, not as a hotel restaurant under hotel branding, but as its own independent business, with Marcus as full owner, operating under a long-term lease at a fraction of market rate. Walter would cover the build-out costs, kitchen equipment, renovation, signage, as a personal investment in the business, structured as a loan Marcus could repay slowly over years, interest-free, whenever the business could afford it. "Not a handout," Walter said, seeing the look on Marcus's face. "A loan. On paper, in writing, with real terms. I want you to build this because you earned the chance to build it, not because I felt sorry for you. There's a difference, and it matters."